A human can hurt an animal once and walk away believing the moment is over. But years later, the animal may still remember their face, and sometimes it teaches others to fear it too. In Seattle, there is a face that crows hate. It is not the face of a real person. It is a rubber mask, blank, expressionless, almost ridiculous to look at. But to the crows living around the University of Washington, that face became something else. A warning. In an experiment, researchers wore the mask while trapping wild crows, briefly handling and banding them, then releasing them. After that, people who had never touched a crow put on the same mask and simply walked through the area. The birds reacted immediately. They scolded. They followed. They gathered above the person wearing the face that had been present on the day something terrifying happened to them. And they did not forget. For at least 2.7 years, the crows continued responding to that dangerous face. Over time, the reaction did not fade. It spread. Birds that had never been trapped began joining the alarm calls. Young birds learned from older birds. A single, frightening encounter had become information carried through an entire local community. Which raises an uncomfortable question. When a human hurts an animal, what exactly does the animal remember? The pain? The fear? The face? Or something larger, the knowledge that a particular kind of human is no longer safe? Scientists are careful with the word cruelty. Cruelty implies intention. It means someone understood suffering and chose to cause it. An animal cannot tell a researcher, "I know what you did to me." But it can do something else. It can remember the individual connected to danger. It can avoid them later. It can warn others. It can carry a response long after the moment itself is over. And once you begin looking for that evidence, it appears in animals that could hardly seem more different from each other. Start with an animal most people would never imagine keeping track of a human face: the giant Pacific octopus. In a 2010 study, 8 octopuses were introduced to 2 unfamiliar humans over 2 weeks. One person reliably brought food. The other touched the octopuses with a bristly stick. Not a dramatic injury, not the kind of abuse that goes viral in a video, but an unpleasant encounter repeated enough to matter. The octopuses learned the difference. Their body patterns, behaviors, and breathing changed depending on which person appeared. An animal with no bones, no family group, and a nervous system built along a radically different evolutionary path from ours was still able to sort human beings into 2 categories: the one who brings something good, and the one associated with discomfort. That distinction matters because remembering harm is older than affection. An animal that forgets kindness may miss a reward. An animal that forgets danger may not survive the next encounter. Fear memory is not a defect in the animal mind. It is one of its oldest protections. Across animal research, threatening experiences can become linked to specific cues: a face, a smell, a sound, a place. The brain does not need a moral concept of cruelty to store a practical rule. When this appears again, leave. Sometimes, the memory is not of one human. Sometimes, it becomes a map of an entire human world. In Kenya's Amboseli ecosystem, elephants have lived beside different human communities for generations. Researchers studying African elephants presented them with clothing cues from Maasai men and from Kamba men. In that setting, Maasai men had historically posed a greater danger to elephants than Kamba agriculturalists. The elephants did not respond as though all humans were the same. They showed greater fear when exposed to the scent of clothing worn by Maasai men. They also reacted differently to visual cues linked to that threat. Somehow, through experience, learning, or information passed through family groups, the elephants had developed a finer distinction than human. Some humans were more dangerous than others. That is not the same as remembering the face of one person who hurt you. It is, in a way, more haunting. It suggests that when harm happens often enough, animals do not merely carry a memory of an event. They may build their behavior around the probability that it will happen again. An elephant herd moves because of what earlier encounters taught it. A crow screams at a face because that face once arrived with a net. An octopus changes its behavior because one pair of hands has become different from another. But perhaps the hardest evidence comes from animals whose suffering did not end when the human left the room. Chimpanzees used in laboratories, kept in isolation, or exposed to repeated distress have been studied after those experiences were over. Researchers have documented clusters of behavior resembling symptoms used to describe depression and post-traumatic stress in humans. Persistent avoidance, abnormal repetitive behavior, heightened distress, withdrawal, and difficulty recovering normal social behavior. Scientists do not say a chimpanzee experiences trauma in precisely the same inner language that a human does. They cannot ask it what returns in the night, or what a locked door means to it years later. But the body remembers something. The behavior remembers something. The suffering does not always stop just because the cruelty has stopped. This is where people often make one of two mistakes. The first is to assume animals forget quickly because they cannot describe the past. The second is to assume that every frightened dog, angry crow, or withdrawn primate is remembering harm exactly the way a human survivor would. The science supports neither extreme. Animals do not need human-like autobiographies to remember danger. They do not need words for betrayal, abuse, or injustice in order for one human hand to become safer than another. But we also cannot claim to know the full subjective story behind every avoidance response. There is one experiment with ravens that makes that boundary especially clear. Researchers trained ravens to exchange a low-value piece of bread with a human for a better reward: cheese. Then, during a crucial interaction, one person completed the exchange fairly. Another took the bread and kept the cheese. Later, when the ravens were given a choice, they preferred the person who had treated them fairly. That memory lasted beyond the immediate moment. Was that cruelty? No. No raven was physically injured. But it showed something important. A bird could remember not only a frightening human, but the nature of an interaction. Who could be trusted and who could not? And trust is where this question finally lands. Do animals remember cruelty? The measurable answer is yes, in the forms science can observe. Crows remember human faces associated with threat for years and teach that danger to other crows. Elephants distinguish human cues associated with greater risk. Octopuses differentiate between people linked to food and people linked to unpleasant treatment. Chimpanzees can carry long-term behavioral damage after severe human-inflicted suffering. What science cannot measure directly is the private shape of those memories. Whether the crow sees the mask and relives the net closing around its body. Whether an elephant remembers a single spear or only the scent of danger on the wind. Whether a chimpanzee knows that the world failed it, or simply wakes each day in a nervous system that learned not to feel safe. Maybe cruelty does not need to be understood as cruelty to leave a mark. Maybe it is enough that an animal learns a face, a hand, a smell, a sound, and decides that whatever carried it can never be trusted again. The crows in Seattle were never told to forgive. They were released. The human being walked away. The mask disappeared for days, then weeks, then months. But when it returned, the sky still recognized it, and it answered.